introductory remarks so we can get going.
Better start by unmuting myself. Well, it's good to see everybody, and we appreciate our elected officials taking the time out to talk to us, and actually more to listen to us than to talk to us, but we definitely want to hear what's going on in Richmond, and look forward to some good discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That's about it.
Well, Mr. Chair, we can, I do believe we have Delegate Joe McNamara with us this evening. Delegate McNamara, good to see you. And Delegate Chris Hurst. I'm trying to catch up to you, Chris. I'm letting mine get back out there now too. And then Nikki, you're on board for Senator Pseudoline. Is that correct this evening?
That is correct.
Very good. Well, I know that the county staff has sent out the legislative priorities resolution that the board adopted. I think that got sent to everyone several weeks ago. I know that also Vicki has emailed the brochure that we put together that outlines our legislative priorities for the upcoming year. Honestly, most of our requests have not changed very much year over year. You know, the biggest things, especially in this year, that we're concerned about is continued funding for our operations, for law enforcement, for schools. Also very hopeful that there will be opportunity to find additional funds to address broadband needs in the county. The county's working hard to move forward on that initiative, and anything that can be done there would be very helpful. We did adopt a separate resolution several weeks ago regarding the issue of qualified immunity and the concern that some on the board had as far as a resolution in opposition to repeal or revise the judicial doctrine of qualified immunity for law enforcement. We sent that to you as well. And also we had sent a letter to each delegate and representative concerning the hold harmless agreement for schools funding for the ADM. That's a big concern for us as we go into this year as well. So with those comments, I'll look around to the other board members to see if board members have any specific items or issues they want to make sure our legislators are aware of, and then we will turn it over to our legislators to hear from you guys and your thoughts on what you see coming up in Richmond. But board members, what comments or things do you want to add? Ms. Vice Chair Bone, I see your hand popped up.
Want to make sure, or we have been hearing some discussion about summer schools and hopefully funding for summer school. So anything that you can do to support us for summer schools, since the students, some students aren't doing so well this year.
Yeah, I talked to Dr. Meyer, and he was saying something like hundreds of a percentage increase in the number of students failing. And as somebody who failed sophomore year English and had to go to summer school, I'm very appreciative of what summer school can do. So, and I know Joe was in on that conversation as well. I think it's something that we're already discussing, maybe trying to do a budget amendment as a one-time thing for this summer to try and make sure that school divisions have some extra resources to hopefully build out a really robust summer school program to get kids as much on track as that would be able to afford.
Thank you. Mary?
Your thoughts on the ADM, because that's really worrying our local school board. I think the last I heard, there were 300 students that they had lost, and so they're really wanting the hold harmless for that. And I just wanted to know how you all felt about that, or if you think something will happen. And then I have another question on a whole different subject.
It's my estimation, just knowing the members of the appropriations K-12 subcommittee on the House side, that we all have a strong desire to keep that hold harmless in place throughout the school year. I know that we have punted to still have a provision that it could be counted for this school year, but I think we'll come back in the General Assembly and try and make that for the entire school year for 2020, 2021, because nothing's necessarily changed. In fact, things across the Commonwealth are getting worse in terms of remote instruction. So yeah, it would certainly be our intent, I think, on House appropriations to keep that language in for the whole school year.
Joe, are you up for that too? Are you supporting that idea?
Yeah, I think ADM will be, I think Chris is exactly right. There's going to be strong support on the House of Delegates. And whether that goes forward for next year or not remains to be seen, but certainly through the end of this year. It came up a little bit on the school board call. I also think, the Montgomery County in particular is down 3% roughly, which is roughly the approximate rate of the Commonwealth as a whole. So since you're sitting at the Commonwealth, I don't think it's as important to you all as you think it is from the standpoint, I don't believe the total pie will be smaller. I think it will be larger. And so as long as you are, your decline in enrollment is at or below the percentage of the statewide decline of enrollment, I believe you're going to be fine or better. So I think that's one you probably can cross off your list. It's probably not something you need to be worrying about.
Okay. Nikki, what about you? Do you, does David have a stance on that, or do you know?
I'm not familiar with that issue, but I think that he aligns a lot of his positions with Delegate McNamara in this sort of issue. So I am confident that I can explain to him this issue and see what he thinks as well.
Yeah, Senator Stewart-Lyon's perfectly aware of the situation, and it came up when I was in a call, or I was in a meeting with him with City of Salem schools. He feels about the same way.
Okay. My second question that I have came up at the airport meeting today. This is the Virginia Tech Montgomery Regional Airport, and we're a member of that, of course. And one of the things that came up is, I guess, the Commonwealth Aviation Trust Fund gets its money from fuel sales and taxes on airplanes and licensing, and of course all that's gone down. And it's felt that airplanes are going to be really used to get the vaccine across the state. And one of the things that came up in the discussion was, I believe right now what's going on is they're using that trust fund for maintenance issues only. And like, if you have a maintenance issue and you take it to them, it sort of pits the larger airports against the smaller ones. And it's really difficult. And they were wondering, like, if any more federal money comes down that goes to highways or airport, or goes to highways, that they're hoping that money will go to airports. And I guess mainly just making you aware of the fact that that's sort of out there. And I hadn't even thought of it, to be honest, about, how it was affecting, smaller airports, bigger airports. But that's just something I wanted to put out there for you to hear in case something came up. And that's all I have right now.
Thank you, Mary.
Mhm.
Do the board members have any specific items you want to make sure our legislative delegation's aware of as we head into 2021?
If everyone's going to be quiet, I'll address a couple of your issues if you'd like, Mr. Meadows.
All right. I appreciate that, Joe. Thank you, sir.
So the first off, Ms. Bond, congratulations on your recent award. It's always exciting when I see an award come on and I say, hey, I know that person. I also, as you're well aware, the session is virtual for the House of Delegates. I will be in Richmond, so if you happen to be in Richmond, we can meet out on the sidewalk. We'll be wearing masks appropriately, standing 6 foot apart. But I will certainly miss my my trip out to dinner with you all this year. But when we get to Richmond, there's you asked where things, what's going to happen. I'm just going to address a couple of the areas that I think I have some knowledge on. Things like budget amendments. I think I mentioned it last year during this meeting that Montgomery County is exceptionally blessed from the perspective of having not only a delegate in Delegate Hurst, but a senator in Senator Edwards that represent part of Montgomery County that sit on the money committee. So certainly budget amendments, certainly Delegate Hurst is going to have one, know more about them, and two, have a better, higher likelihood of success if we trying to tweak some items. So I'm not going to push into some of those, but when you talk about things like qualified immunity, you're probably aware that did pass the House of Delegates. It did not pass in the Senate. I voted against it in the House of Delegates, and I expect myself, and first of all, I do expect to see it back. And I would expect that myself and the entire Republican delegation would vote against it. I would think it has a decent chance of passing the House again, and I would hope the Senate would not pass that. When you look at where ADM, you already discussed a little bit. When you look at unfunded mandates on local governments, I think your entire delegation is fairly familiar with the impact of what we do at the General Assembly and how it impacts you. In this meeting 1 year ago, we had a conversation. I think I made a statement that I not ever pass something that cause localities additional money that I was aware of. Ms. DeMott's reminded or referenced, I think it was security cameras on police, or maybe it was in the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office or something. I wasn't familiar with it. I did send my LA to go research it. He couldn't find where I'd voted for anything like that. So I'm going to stick with my original statement. To my knowledge, I've not voted on something that impacts local government. I'm certainly well aware of having spent close to, I think 17 years in local government, going back almost as far as Ms. Biggs. I certainly understand the impact of that, and I'm very conscious of that. When you look at the SROs, I don't believe there was a real strong feeling. I think there was a bill out there, and it was, and Delegate Hurst may know, I don't think we actually even heard it in the House of Delegates. It was Delegate Carter's bill that eliminated, I think it was Delegate Carter's bill that eliminated funding for the SROs. I actually was on the Board of Supervisors that initiated the SRO program in Roanoke County going back about 15 or 20 years ago. I believe it has very good value, not necessarily from keeping our schools safe, but creating that great relationship between our law enforcement and the students. And when you have a lot of people, young impressionable people, I think it's a great use of resources. It's gone very, very well to my knowledge in all the localities that are using it. And I would expect that not to get a lot of legs in the General Assembly. You brought up taxing authority, protect local governments for current revenue sources. It's the next one. Eliminate the distinction in taxing authority between Virginia cities, counties, and towns. House Bill 785 for the lion's share did that last year. So I think for all intents and purposes, that could be eliminated from your wish list, because in my mind, that's been done. I know the leasehold interest was brought up last year, and I think it had to do primarily with some tech property, and I didn't really get a lot of information on it, and I still don't have a whole lot of information on that. But I will also say, it's not on the list, but the county schools were real interested in having some capability to change occasionally to provide synchronous or asynchronous instruction on days where there might be multiple days where schools are closed and count those toward their standard school year and number of days. Delegate Hurst and I are working on that. I actually put the bill in for drafting, whether we have issues with how many bills we can carry. So whether Delegate Hurst carries it or I carry it or somebody else carries it, I believe that it'll be carried somewhere, and we'll certainly work very hard together to make that happen. Senator Pseudoline, I know, is aware of that bill as well. I don't know for a fact he's putting it in on the Senate side, but as long as we have it on one side or the other, that's really what's important. So those are I think I kind of hit the main ones that you brought forward. The airport, I'm not real familiar with. I know Delegate Hurst may be able to speak more on that. I know there was a couple $1 million put in a fund for recruitment, but it started on appropriations and it ended up going through Go Virginia, and I'm not real familiar with how that panned out, but certainly would love more information on that. You asked about restoring some of the, just from a general perspective. From a general perspective, revenues in the Commonwealth are much stronger than were anticipated. We'll have another revenue run December 16th. The last one, November 12th. Sales tax revenue was up about 8.5% above forecast, which was about a 7%, 7% increase over last year. So while there are certain areas of our economy that are struggling mightily, I happen to own a couple of those. There's also many areas of our economy that are doing okay, and there is so much government fiscal stimulus from the federal government that's put money into our economies, that our economies are actually doing pretty well. Roanoke County is actually doing pretty well. Roanoke City, I just saw an article in the paper, is doing pretty well. So your real estate base, if it's like the rest of the area that I'm representing, is holding up very well. So there's a lot more things going. We also have a very conservative budget that we're in, and I think you're going to see a lot of add backs to that budget when the governor will recommend some. How they end up, that's going to be up to the Appropriation Finance Committee in the Senate. So that I think, touches a little bit on each of your areas.
Thank you, Delegate McNamara. That was a thorough review. And Delegate Hurst, there's probably some things you want to add as well. So,
let me just kind of go through what I have here in my handout for the priorities and kind of echo some of what Joe said, because he and I seem to be tag teaming on these Zooms a lot recently, where it's just him and me going. But that's why we're going to work together on the synchronous learning thing, and then also too, you may be aware of us getting some slippage in terms of ADM that's going to Richmond City Schools because of virtual Virginia issues and the way that kids are allocated to a school division if they're doing virtual learning. So we're also going to try and work on that. We start off first with broadband. I'm on the Broadband Advisory Council now. We are going to approve the awarding of $50 million in contracts through VADI, the Telecommunications Initiative. We've had this Telecommunications Initiative for about 4 or 5 years, but this is the first time we've actually put in any meaningful money towards broadband build out. I'm looking here in the applications, and so your application with Gigabeam, hopefully I don't have any. It's not like the Tobacco Commission where I can kind of put my thumb on it. VADI really makes the determination on it, but hopefully we can get that Gigabeam application approved through the Broadband Advisory Council and through VADI. We're going to think about a rules change for eligibility, which is going to mean that you don't have to be a public-private partnership in order to apply for VADI grants anymore. We're going to open it up to local governments and authorities, political subdivisions thereof. That was kind of really motivated by the Roanoke Valley Broadband Authority. What the recommendation is from the Broadband Advisory Council is to do a pilot program and to say that 10% of all available funds for the next year, this won't count for the $50 million starting now. This will count for the second year of the biennium, which is about $35 million that local governments could participate in that in a pilot program. I'm going to fight in appropriations to get that cap removed, to basically say that we don't need a pilot, we don't need a cap if we're going to go ahead and make this intentional policy change to allow local governments and political subdivisions to compete alongside with the telecoms. We're not going to change the definition of unserved or move it to underserved. We're going to keep it at unserved, because that's really what VADI was set up to do, is provide internet to people who currently don't have it at what we say are broadband speeds, 25 down, 3 up. Obviously, we need to improve that number too in the future. But for right now, what Evan Feinman, who is the chief broadband advisor for the governor, and what the Broadband Advisory Council wants to do, because eventually we're going to have to start to we're going to have to bop the telecoms on the nose when we go after affordability and reliability. And what we really want, though, is while we have this strong public-private partnership with VADI, we still want them to play ball with that. So affordability and increased competition is coming. We're going to legislate some of that this upcoming session. But for right now, hopefully you guys get approved for the Gigabeam grant, because I think that we see how wonderful it's gone in Floyd, and we know how Montgomery County is the epitome of haves and have-nots when it comes to internet access. So SOQ and state's role. I've talked to a couple of my colleagues. Stay tuned, but we plan on introducing an amendment to require that we actually provide a high quality education to every single child here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, to remove the words seek to out of Article 8 of the Constitution that says that we only have to seek to provide a high quality education. We want to remove those words out of the Constitution so that the General Assembly is mandated to provide a high quality education to every child. And that also too, we tie that into actually funding fully the SOQ. So that's going to be, I think, our big gauntlet drop on education. Something that I know Joe has talked about for teacher salaries and wanting us to get back on track for talking about public education. While we have maybe available dollars to reallocate towards things like hopefully a teacher increase, not just necessarily a teacher bonus coming back in January, but that we also legislatively start making the changes so that we don't continually have this perennial discussion of, are we finally going to actually fully fund education and pay teachers what they deserve to be paid in Virginia? If we just take out 2 little words in the Constitution, then now we are constitutionally mandated to do it, just like we're mandated to balance the budget. We'd have to find a way. I don't think we're going to do it unless we're mandated to do so like that. So look forward to that. Who knows if it's going to pass or not, but we really want to kind of set that gauntlet down this legislative session. I would, in this legislative session, not planning on supporting anything having to do with reducing the role of SROs or reducing the scope of SROs in our schools. To me, this session is about maybe taking a couple of big swings at some major items, like school funding, and the governor wants us to take a look at legalization of marijuana in a safe and holistic way. That's going to be a lot of stuff for us to chew on. So to me, the main priorities are going to be on the budget and making sure that, to the extent that the state can provide resources and assistance during the pandemic, that we continue to do so. That it's almost an extension of the special session that we had in the fall and late summer, because these are still very special times, and because we're going to have an even shorter session than we normally do. To me, those are my priorities. So things that are contentious, things that are going to be debated, especially within our Democratic caucus, it's my goal that we just put those off and don't even bother with them for this year. So the things like SROs, and then also qualified immunity, which I voted for during special session, it's not going to pass the Senate. So I don't plan on supporting it again until we feel like the Senate would be able to pass it. So, and I don't think that's happening in January. So I would not vote for ending qualified immunity again. I think I've already showed, that I'm willing to have that conversation. I think it's a nuanced conversation, one that I think we're all ready to have, but unless the Senate is even willing to come to the table on it, then it's moot to me, and I'm not going to fight to try and revive it. I think that we want to try and help with, taxing authority as much as possible. Dr. Myers reached out to me wondering if we can have a conversation about maybe switching Virginia over to school districts that would have their own ability to tax. Rather than having school divisions where they always have to come to you all for tax increases, and then you all have to be made out to be the bad people, trying to oversee their budget. So that's a conversation I think that would require some study. So like some of these bigger ideas, I think we're trying to broach now, but in terms of brass tacks, we're still really focused again on COVID and economic relief. Let's see, support Interstate 81 corridor improvement plan. Of course, I think let's try and work if we need like a budget amendment for the Roanoke Valley, New River Valley Trails connection. I'm more than happy to try and ask for that. We don't want to, we're not going to be opening it up for pork projects, but there has already been a conversation of if it's one-time funds, maybe trying to get localities some one-time funds here with the upcoming budget. I would also say if we want to, I know that ownership of the Christiansburg Institute isn't with the board, but if we actually want to try and see if we can't get some state funding, for that NGO, I think that this is probably the year to try and get that so that they can get their renovations done in a meaningful way. Would be happy to fight for that. And then I think the one thing that I know that we're recording this and that it may get disseminated, but I would say, so I plan on introducing a bill that would create the New River Valley Passenger Rail Authority as a recommendation from the Planning Commission, you all, and NRV 2020. I think that NRV 2020 will be able to deliver on its promise of, what, in the NRV by announced in 2020. But we're gonna have to wait for some more stuff for that. But I think VDOT, the governor, Secretary Shannon Valentine, DRPT Director Jennifer Mitchell, they all deserve the credit, as do everybody with NRV 2020 as these conversations continue, right? So nothing's finalized yet, but the people who started this fight, before I even got into politics, deserve all the credit for us hopefully being able to deliver on what we've told, among us leaders to our citizens, what we want to be able to deliver for them. And by creating a passenger rail authority, my long-term vision out of that would be, can you imagine if, instead of having the smart road connect to 81, which wouldn't really save that much time versus cost, what if we could deal with the terrain issues, but you could take a train to Roanoke to go to work? My girlfriend who works at Lewis Gale could take a train to Salem and get right off there and go to work. From Lynchburg to Roanoke as passenger rail. From Radford to Pulaski to Blacksburg and Christiansburg as passenger rail, commuter rail. These are things that I think this region is ready for. We are seeing so much of a crunch in supply and demand and capacity versus demand in Montgomery County. We need to provide the infrastructure and the groundwork to allow for more people and more investment to come into our region. And I think doing infrastructure improvement is one thing that government can do to try and help, with broadband, passenger rail, improving 81. To me, other infrastructure that we need to do continues to be to support our schools, make sure that there's good healthcare options for people who live here. And then for me, housing. Housing is the thing that I have now become preoccupied even professionally now. My girlfriend and I are flipping homes one by one, in the area, because we need new stock and we need new refurbished stock. We need stuff that people can look at and feel like it's actually worth the price that's being offered right now, so that we don't have so many of these individuals who are being given offer sheets at some of our tech companies out of the CRC and are declining because they don't see a home suitable for them and their family. So I'm kind of like build baby build when it comes to housing too. So we have everything kind of lined up for us to continue to succeed. I want to make sure that some of the divisive social issues, we try not to muck up all the progress we're making. So, qualified immunity, SROs, not worth my time right now. I'm really focused on trying to make sure that we have the NRV looked after and that we have some things that come our way and we have some policies that really help us. Some attention placed back on us, I think, is important. And I just really appreciate that not everywhere in the General Assembly and throughout Virginia do you have a good relationship with your local governments and your elected state leaders. So, and not everywhere do you have a good bipartisan agreement on a lot of the regional issues. The things that are regional for us, home cooking, the delegation's going to be in lockstep trying to fight for all of those things. So I enjoy working with Joe and Nick and Senator Pseudoline and Senator Edwards too. So I think I talked about all of the issues that I saw on my card here, a couple of things that I'm working on individually. But this is the time for us to really take the reins and move this region forward, because there's just unbelievable opportunity. And I'm just glad that you all are in leadership positions to help make it happen.
Thank you, Delegate Hurst. I appreciate that very much. And I have to share that as well as I talk to my folks across the state. My fellow managers and whatnot, they talk about some of the struggles they have with their state legislators. And I've made it clear when I have those conversations that we have good relationships with ours. We may not always agree on every issue, but we know we can reach out to you guys and you'll be helpful and give us a listening ear. And if it's something you can help us with, you certainly do that. We appreciate that very much. Nikki, as far as Senator Pseudoline, anything that you want to add from the senator's perspective this evening?
I actually don't have a whole lot to add. We've sort of talked about all of these things in depth, and it is a great learning experience for me. This is my first time on this call, so thank you guys for having me. I don't think that I have very much to add, except for to echo some of the things that have already been said. Senator Pseudoline is not super concerned about the loss of funding for Montgomery County. I think that he believes that with the ADM being affected statewide, that it would be reasonable to believe that funding will probably remain on par. He is also carrying the synchronous school bill as well. So he is looking at that. I believe one of the school divisions brought that to him. But as far as the other issues, I don't have anything to add, but I'm so glad that I have heard your thoughts on it so I could bring them to him as well.
Well, thank you very much, Nikki. We're glad to have you with us this evening. Board members, are there any other comments? I'll turn it back to Chair Fidzikowski to let you wrap things up, sir.
I got one thing.
Yeah. Go ahead, Todd.
Excuse me. Thank you all for coming. I got a couple of things on the ability to let schools tax citizens. If that was to come about, I would like it to be presented to the citizens of Virginia and let them vote on it. Number two is, Mr. Hurst, you brought up about legalizing marijuana. I can tell you in my district, they don't want that to happen. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Supervisor King.
All right, thank you. Vice Chair Bone.
Just a couple of questions about broadband for Delegate Hurst, but if either others want to chime in. I understand the minimum up and down loading. Is there any mark off for a application? For example, the GigaBeam stuff that we're doing is better. And then the second part of that is we were told, right, wrong, or indifferent, that it would cost about $30 million to get broadband throughout our county. And if we could do that as fast as possible, do you see a way for us to do that in the next couple of years, or about how long would you expect it to take us if $30 million is what would take to do the county, if we had the money?
Yeah, I'm really not the expert on this, but that, we do have really qualified people in the Department of Housing and Community Development under the Department of Commerce, that really know what they're doing on it. So I don't think in the application, I know that they're scored across a matrix, all of the grant applications. I don't believe that adding, surplus upload speed is a mark against you. I think it really has to do more with financials and matching, and then also, the scope of the work, and also to the number of homes that are going to be connected. That's a really big thing for them. But if you want some specificity for that, I can send an email tonight and get you an answer, tomorrow, if because you guys went with GigaBeam, that was a mark against, as opposed to being a little more, conservative, I suppose, in connectivity speed, but I don't think it would be, but let me try and check out with you for that. The answer to your second question, I think it's going to require some leverage of local dollars, state dollars, and federal dollars to be able to meet the task of trying to get everybody connected to at least the current definition of broadband by the middle of the decade. That's what Governor Northam wants to set us up to do before he leaves. That's certainly, I think, the mandate that we want as the Broadband Advisory Council, the chief advisory board for the General Assembly and the governor. So we're just going to have to figure out first, after now being able to do $85 million over this budget year for broadband projects, how much closer does that meaningfully get us to trying to make sure that everybody has connectivity? I don't know what it's going to mean necessarily for Montgomery County, but as we start to get closer to the middle of the decade, as more people continue to be offline, I think it's then really imploring our federal folks, if they haven't done another big infrastructure bill or funding, to try and just make it happen in any way that we can. That's why we're trying to reduce barriers to competition, so that ideas can't just be denied simply because you don't have a telecom partner helping you actually try and meet the demands of your citizens. I can't give you a great answer on that. 30 sounds about, it doesn't sound ridiculous as a number for me. And that, I'll work with you to try and leverage as much state dollars. And if we need to lobby the feds to do it, to try and actually get us where everybody in Montgomery County has good, reliable broadband internet by the middle of the decade.
Yeah, I've also heard, 5 years, they think within reason, the vast majority of the Commonwealth of Virginia will have broadband available, both from a service perspective and an affordability perspective. So technology is our friend, and technology will make it easier as time goes on. I've heard of technology recently that where they're laying, fiber is probably not the right word, but it almost laying tape on roads and running a broadband signal through it at about 1/4 of the cost of running fiber. I think there also is going to be, it's going to be a shared endeavor. I think there's strong support in the General Assembly. I've said this on it, broadband comes up every call. Republican, Democrat, House of Delegates, Senate, everyone believes and understands the importance of broadband to a point. I mean, there's going to be certain areas that it's, we're not going to use public dollars and spend $100,000 to get a house broadband. And or at least I'm certainly not going to support that. But I think it, from a feasibility perspective, technology is our friend. Technology will make it more possible. And there's also a very strong emphasis. The other thing is $85 million is by far the largest 2-year commitment to broadband from the Commonwealth of Virginia. Chris knows these numbers. He's on that board. I think it was 36 or 38 the last 2 years.
Total.
What was it total?
16 total over the biennium, the last budget.
16. Okay, I thought it was more than that, but I mean, that's a pretty big impact, and it's a big increase, and it's also being helped. I know Roanoke County is trying to use some CARES money for it, and it is a one-time expense. So there is a fair amount of one-time money sitting in the budget that the governor and the General Assembly is going to be able to deal with for this year. So. Just hold your cards, keep working hard, and we'll do the same.
All right. Anybody else? Mary?
On the issue of school districts raising taxes, wouldn't that be an issue that would go to JLARC if it ever got to that point? Because there are pros and cons for that argument.
I would have no interest whatsoever in supporting that.
So I think it's a discussion that was born out of frustration by many superintendents that we continued to kick this can down the road. I think that there are a bunch of different ways that we might be able to actually do the funding equity. I think that part of it has to be in, acknowledging that unless we have some clear mandates, then we're never actually going to reach that final destination. And so I think it's a wake-up call for me as a member of the General Assembly that when you're thinking about that kind of a radical departure change that's being recommended to you by key leaders in school divisions, that it's time for us to to actually take this seriously. But you're right, Mary. I mean, that kind of thing I just mentioned is like a very 30,000 foot view, which would take many, many years for us to even consider, if we choose to even want to consider it, before we would take it to the voters. And Todd, I think you're right. I think we would have to make a constitutional change for that. And anytime you do that, we got to have voter approval. And even if we didn't, I wouldn't have any problem of having that be a local referendum issue anyway. So I hear you on that. I don't bring it up to mean that that's even something seriously on the table, but just to say, again, with funding education, that it's getting to be such a ridiculous notion of not solving this, that now some people are coming up with some, pretty out of left field ideas. I think changing the Constitution, my idea is by getting rid of SEEK is pretty bold out there too. But I think we need to start having some of these bold conversations so that the citizens of Virginia really understand, and hopefully we can get them to believe in the value of finally doing the maximum investment in education that we can.
Yeah, I totally agree with the idea of changing that in the Constitution, because all these years that I've been involved in it, that it always comes back to, well, we're doing our part.
Yeah, well, the Constitution just says we have to try. It doesn't say we have to do.
All right, thank you. April, did you have a question?
I do, thank you. First of all, thank you all for being here with us tonight in this format. It's very appreciated to see you. I wanted to just kind of get on a soapbox a little bit. Delegate Hurst, you mentioned build, baby, build, and I want to make sure that we're not forgetting the very critical piece of affordable housing as we're looking at building, and making sure that that is a priority, something that is funded. It's critically underfunded now, and so affordable housing, I know you're all aware, is a critical need in Montgomery County. So I would just want to make sure that that issue also stays on your radar. And Supervisor King brought up when it came to the legalization of marijuana that his district likely would not be in support of that. I certainly don't speak on behalf of every citizen in my district, but I think that some steps could be made in that direction. But I appreciate the point that Delegate Hurst made, that this really isn't the year to be bringing up divisive social issues when we've got a lot of recovery to do. So I really wanted to thank you, Delegate Hurst, for your position and what you said, your comments there. I think that that sends a very nice message to the members of our community that are watching this evening, that our General Assembly representatives are interested in recovery and moving us forward, and we want to work together to do it. So again, thank you all for being here tonight. It's great to see you. Would love to see y'all in person, but this will have to do for now. Hope you guys all have great holidays.
Thank you. Sherry, you have anything you want to bring up?
You guys hear me? Okay. Thank you all for being here. It is good to see everybody.
Yeah.
And again, I'm Delegate Hurst. I'm glad to hear that at this point you would not be pushing for the qualified immunity for that. As married to a recently retired state trooper, I think that would not be in the best interest of our county, and I appreciate the board for passing and agreeing with that for the resolution, that we would be in opposition for that. And I do agree and appreciate your comments about this is not the time to be divisive, that we all need to come together to recover and do what's best for all of our citizens. And I appreciate, and I'm grateful that we do have delegation here, that we can always feel free to reach out and to talk and to discuss things, even though we may not always agree. I do believe we have a strong relationship, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Daryl, you have something?
I just wanted to say thank you to the guys for showing up, Mr. McNamara and Mr. Hurst and Nikki. I really appreciate the information and the updates. I did want to say one thing to the affordable housing. I assume you're all aware, I know the board is, that there's 2 developments going in on Prices Fork Road in my district, and I fully supported those. one of those, I didn't ask the questions at the second one, but the first one, they sold it as affordable housing. And I said, so what do you call affordable housing? And they were like, well, $250,000, $300,000, $350,000 each. In my income, that's not affordable. So I don't know. I guess I'd like to know, is that general consensus that is affordable or not? You know, I mean, just something to think about. So, but anyway, I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I don't want to be imprecise with what I was talking about, that it's deeply troubling to me that none of our new construction seems to be at median home price or below, and that we need to be doing something where people, I mean, I think that there should be more avenues to home ownership, and trying to save up to be able to buy is a real impediment to a lot of people. But something in Virginia, in our area, between 150 and 250, we need a lot more stock in that area. And so trying to think of new ways to do that with dense housing. I know that Blacksburg came to me wanting to amend their charter to look at zoning for student versus non-student housing. Density, I think, is really important too. Density, I think, can help with affordability. We want also to make sure that we're building in places where people have things within, preferably within walking distance. So where we do it and how we do it is very, very important to me. Want to make sure we have enough stock, at that median home price and below, no doubt.
Thank you. That's all I have, Steve.
All right, appreciate it. I guess
Quick question, if I could.
Go ahead.
Mr. Meadows, does
Sure.
Montgomery have a cluster housing ordinance?
Not that I'm aware of, Delegate McNamara, we don't.
That's something potentially you could do at a local level. That you basically have as Delegate Hurst said, you shrink the density and then you have shared green space, so they can really be very, very, very nice developments. In a small area as small as 3 acres. So, that might be something the board could look at that might help the developers out making things affordable.
I know that's something that our planning director has talked about, as well as we've looked at some ideas on how to make some opportunities for more affordable housing. So thank you for mentioning that. We'll follow up on that as well.
All right, well, I guess I'll close this out. I think most of the questions that I would have asked have already been asked, and I kind of expected that. We've been probably holding on to these questions for too long, and it's nice to get them out and let you guys hear them come right from our mouths. But I certainly want to say that I am very pleased to hear what I'm hearing about broadband. This year has showed us how desperate we need that when kids have to stay home from school and learn over the internet. So it's very, very positive thing to hear. I like what I'm hearing about the railroad. I like also talking about housing, and Daryl brought up a good point. The two projects going up in his area are going to put a real big burden on Price's Fork Road. And that's something that I'm kind of concerned with as we expand and allow developers to build houses. We have to have ways that people can get to and from them. And Price's Fork is going to be an issue for sure. The traffic is very heavy there at certain times of the day. But and I was very glad to hear Delegate Hurst talk about the Christiansburg Institute. I think that's great that you all are considering or will consider helping them out. We have done so in the past, but for the kind of things that they need done, it's going to take more than just a county and a couple of towns to help out. So we appreciate that. And I like what I'm hearing about the ADM holding, and I hope that comes to pass. I think everybody is optimistic. Everything we talk about to the school division. They're optimistic about it, but I am really more concerned about next year's ADM. In the next school year, I think the next count would be in September. And that's kind of frightening that if we're able to make it through this year, just to come into a time where it's going to really cripple us as far as dollars. So that's my biggest concern. Some other thoughts I have, I was very disappointed that we had this reaction to incidents across the country and not here in Virginia, or definitely not in the New River Valley, that has led us to pass laws about civilian review boards. As you all know, as a retired police officer, civilians have no idea of how police operate and how they work, except for what they see on TV, where the police officer gets in a shooting within an hour, goes to court, and moves on with his life. And that's just not the way it is. And I think that's going to be a disaster to policing in general in Virginia. But I guess time will tell. Very disappointed in the elimination of no-knock warrants. They're there for a reason, because there are some people that are so bad, you can't knock on the door and introduce yourself without getting a couple of rounds through the door. So it's that really bothers me. And the fact that you can't serve search warrants at night. There's a reason why that police have to do those things, and they don't do it as a routine. I think it's sad that we've gone to that, but the big one is the elimination of qualified immunity. And I'm glad to hear that nobody has a real taste to deal with that again, because you wouldn't have to defund police. If you eliminate qualified immunity for police, they will eliminate themselves. You will see the ranks of police disappear. And this is at a time when recruiting police is near impossible. And as a trooper, I remember when they had 90 positions opened in the state police, they'd get 4,500 applications. Now they don't get anything. They don't get any. It's terrible. And I'm sure localities are facing similar problems, especially in the big cities. And I hate to see us take a kind of a knee-jerk reaction to what's going on in the rest of the country and say, well, this is good for Virginia. When you take away probable cause for police to stop people and to look further, that's what they're there for. That's what citizens want them to do, is to look further. So I hope there won't be any more of this, because it's basically making police officers' lives more endangered. And I hate to see that. We lose too many of them every year in this country. We always lose some here in Virginia. And I hate to see that we make their situation more perilous by passing things that really are not going to amount to anything. They're really not. But that's my 2 cents worth. And that's about all I've got, Craig, unless you've got something else to pursue.
Mr. Chair, I do not this evening. I certainly appreciate the board members taking the time this evening to participate in this, and Delegate McNamara, Delegate Hurst, and Nikki, on behalf of Senator Pseudoline, from staff, we certainly appreciate the time that you guys have spent with us this evening. Sorry we couldn't feed you. I was just sitting there thinking maybe in February we can figure out a way to socially distance at Penny Lane and sit on, we'll sit around and catch up with everybody and see how it's going. I do hope the session goes well. It's been a challenging year. I don't know that January and February are going to be any less challenging right now, but we certainly appreciate all you do on behalf of our citizens and for us as a staff at Montgomery County. We greatly appreciate that.
Great to be with all you folks. Anything you need, just reach out. We're starting to run out of slots, but I think we should be able to take care of a lot of the items on your agenda this year, at least fight for them. So I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Thank you.